Hello and welcome back. My name is Madeline and I talk about random things every Tuesday. Today we are here to talk about Nanowrimo, aka National Novel Writing Month. For those of you that don't know, November is National Novel Writing Month and the goal is to write a whole 50,000 word novel in the 1 month. Some NaNoWrimos even end up getting published and they become famous. These ones include The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, Cinder by Marissa Meyer, Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen, and Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. It's a really exciting time of year, and as a veteran of NaNoWrimo, I thought I would just share some of my advice. I started doing NaNoWrimo with my friends when I was in middle school, so I did it 2 years of middle school, I did it 4 years of high school, I took time off during college, and then I did it in 2019. So that means that this will be my 8th NaNoWrimo this year. The very first NaNoWrimo I did, I wrote maybe 2,000 or 3,000 words, so very, very far, and then I gave up and I got discouraged. And every single year I kept getting more and more and more. When 2013 rolled around, I had gotten up to 30,000 words, and my NaNoWrimo actually came in like 15th place on Wattpad that year. It was very exciting, and I felt like next year I was going to be able to do it. So NaNoWrimo 2014 rolls around, I'm doing so good, I'm ahead of schedule, I probably have 30,000 words, I really like what I'm writing, and my computer dies. And it never comes back. So my very first tip is make sure you're saving your NaNoWrimo in multiple spots. I usually save one on my computer, one on my Google Drive, and then sometimes one on a flash drive at like milestones. Because you don't want to lose your NaNoWrimo. It was so upsetting and so discouraging that I didn't do NaNoWrimo all through college. Like, it was that upsetting. But I am happy to say that in 2019, I finally did finish my 50,000 word novel, and the sense of like accomplishment is unmatched. Like, it feels so good to finally have something written down like that. Which brings me to my second piece of advice. Do not get discouraged. About halfway through, it feels like, oh man, I'm not gonna be able to do this. Like, what have I done? I've undertaken too big of a project. It's just not going to happen. And then Thanksgiving rolls around for those of us living in America, and it's like, oh my god, Thanksgiving festivities, I'm not going to be able to stay on the schedule. But you know what? You can and you will. You just have to figure out what works for you. What I like to do is, within the first week, get a couple thousand words ahead so that you can take days off here and there without feeling guilty, and then you can come back to your work feeling refreshed and ready to go. What I found is that every book really does have a different process. My 2019 NaNoWrimo, I made like a really big bulleted list, and I followed like an Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 structure with like certain conflicts, like kind of more of like a traditional storytelling structure. But this year what I'm going to do for my NaNoWrimo, I think I'm going to do flashcards because I have multiple POVs and I just want to make sure that all the events make sense, like in order. And that way I can also write out of chronological order if I feel like I need to. Another thing that works for me, I know some people like to stay on a schedule, but for me, I like to write when I'm feeling like super inspired. So it helps if I have a scene the next day that I'm looking forward to writing, but it also helps if I write when I'm like in the right mindset. Like, I don't like to force myself to write because then it feels like a chore and I want it to be something that I like doing. Okay, another thing, do not start editing. Do not start editing. You'll be tempted to, but don't. What I like to do is I go back, I read a couple pages before where I ended, and I'll maybe, make a couple tweaks to that, but I don't make any major revisions. The important thing to remember here is that we're trying to get the words on the page. There's a really good essay called Shitty First Drafts, and I'll link it below, and it's basically about how the first draft phase is just about getting the words and the story on the page, and it's really in the later revisions when you make it sound like you want it to, and you update your writing style and that kind of thing, but it's important to not lose track of what you're really trying to do, which is just to get words on the page. If you start editing, you'll never make the word count. Take it from me. Take it from my experience. Another thing is I'm a strong believer in outlines, but your story is going to change while you're writing it, and that's totally fine. You don't have to stick to this outline that you came up with weeks ago. You can just update it on the way, and then later when you're editing, you can make sure that it makes sense in the beginning. Another piece of advice I have, and this one I learned from Stephanie Meyer, is when you're writing, pretend no one else is ever going to see it. Like, you are writing for you. Write the story you want to hear. If you want to share it with people later, good for you, kudos, but if you don't, that's fine too. We're writing this for us, guys. Another thing that people find helpful is finding a writing community. When I was doing it with all my friends, it was so fun because we'd update each other on word counts and we talk about our stories, and it was just a really good time to like kind of find like fellowship. Having said that, this is COVID times, so I didn't do that. I'm probably not going to do that this year, but I will still keep my friends updated on what I'm doing, and I always tell my parents how my thing's going. I put my Nanowrimo on Wattpad for 2 years, and that was really cool because I could get feedback on my chapters, and also Wattpad just really fosters like a sense of community. So that was really great if you're looking for something like that. This might just be me, but something else that really works for me is always having a notepad or my phone's notepad app available, because when you're writing a NaNoWriMo, ideas will pop in your head all the time. And sometimes it's just a word. Like I'm like, oh my god, I have to use this word, so I'll just jot it down so I can remember it for later. But other times, characters or plot points will come to you at the weirdest times, and it's very important you write them down because then it's easier to go back later and just write it in. Another thing that's helpful is to Google NaNoWriMo word count calendar, and it will tell you every day what word count you should be at to stay on track. And again, I just use it as a guideline to make sure I'm not falling too far behind, but it is helpful if you're one of those people who tends to procrastinate to kind of see where you should be at, what your target should be ongoing. And lastly, just be excited. It's not supposed to feel like a chore, it's supposed to feel like a hobby. It's a fun thing that we get to do. I have a NaNoWriMo t-shirt that I wear sometimes, / like a lot in November. I sometimes will make a Pinterest board, so I kind of have like the vibe of my story. Sometimes I'll make a music playlist. In 2019, I made a music playlist full of songs about sleeping and dreaming because my story was about people who could sleep jump into other people's minds, and it was so cool. It was really awesome. Or you could post it on your blog. I might document it this year for my booktube. Maybe my TikTok, who knows? Sometimes you're just not gonna be in the mood to write, and that's when you bring out the candles, that's when you bring out the playlist, that's when you maybe even get in costume, who knows what you do, but the more you get into your story, the more fun it feels, and I think then you're more inspired to be writing. All in all, I'm so excited for NaNoWriMo 2021. Are you participating this year? If not, let me know. If you are, also let me know. Tell me what your story is about. I would love to talk about it, and I wish you the best of luck. See you next Tuesday. And but this year what I'm going to do is like flash drives because I have multiple,